Phase aligning drum tracks. So now we've consolidated all of our regions. As you can see, we have this nice correspondence between our track names and the region names. Everything's all the same length, starts the same, and any track that gets askew, we can just toss it on back to the beginning and everything plays nicely. Okay, so what we're going to do at this point is we're going to take a look a little closer at the drums, because by listening to it we can tell that there's some issues with the phase alignment of the drums. Now this is one of the toughest things with recording drums, is that you're recording the same instrument with a lot of different mics and multiple sources and different locations and such. And so what's going to happen is maybe you're not recording the snare drum with a mic that's on the tom, but it's going to pick up the snare drum. And when it gets to the tom mic, it's going to be later, because it's going to take some time to get there. Not very much time, but enough time to make a difference. Later than it gets to its own mic. Same thing's happening with the overhead mics. And most of that, if you place your mics well, it works out well. But what's going to happen is it's going to create some phase issues. So things are not happening at the same time. And so it's good to take a look at your drums and make sure that there's no phase issues happening. There's another problem with this session that we find out is, as we listen to the drums, we see that we have a tom 1 mic. Now we look along this mic, this track here on that mic, and we see that there's some peaks. We listen to those peaks and we realize that, I'm pretty sure that this player didn't actually ever hit that tom. So there was a mic on the tom and it was never even used. And so this right here is going to just act as bleed, because this mic is really just acting as like a third overhead mic from being on the tom, which really isn't that great of a thing. We could actually use this mic to do some crazy processing to it if we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to just right click on this. Let's make sure to unsolo it first. Right click on it, and we're just going to say hide and make inactive. So it's not going to take any power, but it really is kind of pointless because there's nothing happening on that tom that it's miking. Okay, so here's our drums. Now if we zoom in, we're going to select our drums here, and if we hold Option and Shift with those selected, they're going to get all big together. And we're going to take in and hit T a million times and zoom in on some of this stuff here. Now if we zoom in, we can really see what's happening here. And so we've got our snare top, our snare bottom, our hi-hat, and our overheads. And we can see what's happening is there's a lot of phase unalignment that's occurring here. And so first of all, we notice that our overheads are off by a little bit, and then the hi-hats in a different world here, and the snare top and the bottom are actually pretty much out of phase with each other, as you can see here. So we're going to fix each of those problems. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the overheads and we are going to split them into two separate tracks. So I know that in the last video we took two mono tracks and moved them into stereo, so now we're just doing the opposite thing because we need to kind of align these separately from each other. So the big thing to do here is, first of all, to figure out what's your base. What are you going to move everything to? And the other thing we have to do with Pro Tools here is we've got to make sure to give ourselves some room to move things around. So our left overhead is going to be our main track. We're going to move our stereo overhead tracks out of the way kind of here. And we're going to just give ourselves some room. So, because if we don't do this, then we can't actually drag stuff to the left because it's all the way at the beginning. And so what we're going to do is zoom back in on this overhead track here. So there's our right overhead. So we're going to take our right overhead and we're going to move our right overhead so it kind of lines up. A little better with our left. Okay. See how things are kind of hitting at the same time. Actually, I'm going to move it back a little bit so these bigger ones line up. Okay, and then you can see our hi-hat is way early, and that's partially because it's being mic'd closer, and so some of this is kind of, you know, an inherent thing that's going to happen. So we want to kind of line this bump up with the bump in these other ones. Okay, and then on our snare bottom track, that's really the lineup there, but you can see we've got this, we really are like 180 degrees out of phase. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take and go to Audio Suite, Other, and Invert. And this is how we do it here in Pro Tools. There's other ways in other programs. And we're just going to select that snare bottom track, hit process, and it's going to just flip it upside down. Okay, so everything that was positive is negative, and vice versa. Okay, we'll kind of get those lined up in place there.